Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Kristen.
And my name is Katie, and we want to spend a few minutes a day with you walking through the New Testament, one chapter at a time. This year, we will fix our gaze upon Christ so that we may know him, not only with our minds, but with our hearts.
Together, we will learn that who Jesus is changes everything. Welcome back to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Kristen Schmucker, and we are diving into the entire New Testament, one chapter a day. Today, we are in Matthew 24. As always, I'm using the free Behold reading plan and the Behold study guides from the Daily Grace Co., and I'll link those for you in the show notes. Today we are in Matthew 24. Can you believe that we have just a few days left in the book of Matthew? Today's passage is what is commonly referred to as the Olivet Discourse. At the start of the passage, we see that Jesus leaves the temple area and his disciples come with him. They walk and talk and then sit on the Mount of Olives where Jesus explains to them more of what is to come. As they walked, the disciples noticed the beautiful Jerusalem temple. From their perspective, it would last forever. It must have seemed like the most beautiful of monuments that represented a faith that had stood the test of time. I know that I would have loved to have seen it and have been able to walk where Jesus walked. Though the temple seems like it was nearly eternal, Jesus told them that it would not last. The disciples didn't understand yet, but the temple would be destroyed within their lifetime. In AD 70, the city of Jerusalem fell, and the temple was destroyed. While the disciples marveled at the temple's beauty, Jesus said that not one stone would be left upon another. Once they were outside the city, the disciples needed answers. They asked Jesus, "When will this happen?" But it seems the disciples had confused several different events in their questioning. This shouldn't be surprising. We have already seen how many times Jesus had to explain that he would die and be raised, and yet the disciples still did not get it. Here they ask about the destruction of the temple, but they also ask Jesus about his coming at the end of the age. They are looking for the triumph of the Messiah that they had read so much about in the Hebrew Scriptures. Much of this chapter speaks of what is coming in AD 70, when the temple was destroyed. Though scholars interpret this passage differently, many believe that there is a dual fulfillment that Jesus had in mind, that he is speaking not just of the temple's destruction, but also giving language for his final return in glory. I can't imagine what it would have been like to be the disciples and be hearing such hard news about what was to come. Persecution would come, and the vast majority of the disciples would be martyred for their faith in their risen Savior. There would be false teachers who promised hope that they knew could only be found in Jesus Christ. The people would flee and run for the hills, and yet through it all, the people of God would be called to persevere, to trust that God was at work, though they couldn't see how God could bring good from this. God was at work. Colossians 1:5-6 confirms what Jesus says here about how the gospel went throughout the whole world. It says, "You have already heard about this hope in the word of truth, the gospel, that has come to you. It is bearing fruit and growing all over the world, just as it has among you since the day you heard it and came to truly appreciate God's grace." Tertullian famously said that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. You may think that this level of persecution would hurt Christianity, but the willingness of Jesus' followers to lay down everything, including their lives, only caused Christianity to spread as people around the world encountered the man from Galilee. We may be tempted to try to set dates or guess based on current events when Jesus will return. But that is certainly not the point of this passage or what Jesus was trying to teach his disciples. Instead, he is urging them to faithfulness. He is encouraging them to remain steadfast in the midst of trial. He is telling them to be ready when he returns. In fact, did you catch in verse 36 how Jesus says that the angels do not know and even the Son does not know, but only the Father in heaven knows the day and the hour? This is a reminder to us of how Jesus took on flesh in the incarnation and became like us. He is God himself and yet allowed himself to live in the limits of humanity. He needed food when he got hungry. He got tired on a long journey. Soon he would feel pain upon a cross. He limited even his omniscience, which means that he is all-knowing, to live as a man and experience life the way that we do, yet without sin. So today we behold Jesus. We see him walking the long, dusty road to Calvary. He went with faithfulness and steadfastness, and now he calls us to do the same, to live out our days in a way that reflects him to the world around us. He lived in a culture that hated God, and I don't know about you, but sometimes we can feel that way too. And yet he modeled for us faithfulness, steadfastness, perseverance, and trust in the hand of the Almighty Father who was with him on the road to Calvary and is with us today, no matter what the road before us may bring.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. Don't forget to check out the show notes for helpful links and resources related to today's episode. And make sure you are following at Daily Grace Podcast on Instagram for more A Year in the Bible content, and at the Daily Grace Co. for all things Bible study resources. We can't wait to study again with you tomorrow. Bye, friends.